I just graduated college. My family needed somebody to move out there. So I packed up from my dorm room and went, in my car and drove to San Antonio, Texas.
To run a hotel.
To run 2 days in.
Days in.
Yeah.
Welcome to Teague Talks. Today we're sitting down with Al Patel, Chairman and CEO of Baywood Hotels. Al, thanks for joining me. This is going to be fun.
Thank you for having me.
So my memory, last time we did this, you were like the third guest on Teague Talks.
Yes.
COVID, different era.
Different era indeed. An era I'd like to forget.
Yeah, we would all like to forget that, right? But now we're here doing this again, which I appreciate it. Because the goal of this is to figure out who is Al Patel, how did he get started, how did he get into this business? So I want to hear about all of that.
Sure.
But real fast, where are we today? Where are we sitting right now in this beautiful hotel?
We are at the Moxy Hotel in the Wynwood neighborhood of Miami. It's a 120-room Moxy. It's kind of a little bit outside our comfort zone. It's got 4 levels of retails, 4 bars in this hotel. We are in Sparrow Italia restaurant right now. We've partnered with Noble 33, and they operate this for us. We also will be opening a Casa Madera on the top 2 floors, along with a rooftop bar in the next 3 to 4 weeks. That will open.
Yeah, and we were here for dinner last night, and this was a popular place.
Yeah, these guys have done a fantastic job marketing this restaurant from the very early stages. This is the 10th or 12th day open right now, and it's already full every day.
Well, I mean, all the cool kids were here.
Yeah.
Is this the future of hotels? And this F&B component is the future?
Yeah, I do. I think that when you are in a destination, I think that the guests love this type of, multifaceted kind of experiences that they can have, as opposed to our normal, kind of our bread and butter, if you will, is, suburban extended stay hotels, maybe an AC here and there or something like that, or a Hilton Garden Inn here and there. But, this is very, very interesting to us, and we'll see how this one goes.
That's if we do more of these or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
It is a big boy project. It's probably our largest project we've done to date.
All right, I'm fascinated to watch. So let's get into it. I need to know, especially from this big boy project, because I know going back, you're doing Residence Inns and Homewoods and starting back to our days at Holiday Inns and Days Inns.
Yeah.
So who is Al Patel? How did he get into this business?
Yeah.
And how did Baywood get started?
That is a great question. So my father bought his first motel in 1975 in Maryland, and we grew up in the business, as many of us in this industry did.
What was Dad? Dad came to the States to do what? And then why did he buy a motel?
He was a chemical engineering major,
right?
A chemistry major, a master's in chemistry. This is the nexus of his joining the business, was he wasn't saving a lot of money. He'd bought a house and the car and all that stuff, and he wasn't saving a lot of money. And he had some friends in the San Francisco Bay Area that had bought a motel type of property. And they said, this is great. Your living expenses are zero, no property taxes, you can write off your phone bill. All this stuff is written off. And, the wife and the kids, as they start, they can help out in the business while you're still at work. And that was the kind of the nexus of it. Couple of years in, my dad kept his job and my mom ran the motel. And then eventually he saw that, well, this is the way to go. He quit his job, and then he expanded. He went from 1 to 3 in only 4 years. So it was very, the hard work paid off for him.
What was the first motel?
It was just an independent 23-room motel in Laurel, Maryland. Very nondescript, but it had a really big house that was part of the front desk. And so that's where we all grew up.
Yeah. How many years did you live in that house?
8 years
motel?
In that one, but I lived in a motel till I went to college.
Right.
Long time.
Right.
Long time.
This stuff, we don't appreciate this stuff. Your kids probably won't appreciate.
But we learned the business from the very grassroots, negotiating, hey, it's 11 o'clock. We're probably not going to sell this room tomorrow. Let's lower the price. Let's not let anybody walk away. Let's play make a deal, because that inventory is no good to us tomorrow. So we learned all about the basics of supply and demand. Very, very hands-on.
In the early days of, revenue analytics.
Yes, revenue management.
Revenue
right?
management,
Yes.
thank
The
you.
price goes up, by the minute sometimes.
And
yeah.
Star Report was just walking across the street to ask
yes, going across and
competitor.
seeing, driving around parking lots and counting cars.
So what was Hotel 2 and 3?
It was a motel in all in Maryland
All in
still.
Maryland.
Yeah, one was in Southern Maryland, one was in Northern Maryland, and it was mostly Maryland for the first 10 or 15 years.
Okay.
Branched out into San Antonio, Texas in 1994.
Okay.
I had just graduated college. My family needed somebody to move out there because that's how we did it, and nobody else volunteered. And I said, I'll go. Yeah, I'll go. So I packed up from my dorm room and went, in my car and drove to San Antonio, Texas.
To run a hotel.
To run 2 days ins.
Days
yes,
ins.
Yes. Did that for a few years, and then we bought some Holiday Inns in Erie, Pennsylvania. We ran that for a few years, and then it was a lot of work for some money. And I had a lot of friends in the business that were building these 60-room Comfort Inns and things like that that were doing quite well with it.
Yeah.
And so we decided to dip our foot in this construction, and first hotel was a Hampton Inn. But to go back a little bit, it was like, my dad wasn't truly convinced, and my older brothers weren't truly convinced that was the way to go. But eventually they came around and were very active in assisting and finding our first location to build. The first location was a Hampton Inn in Columbia, Maryland. Did very well. Sold out the very first night we opened.
Of course.
And so my dad's reservations were very quickly unwound. And he said, why don't you do what you do and we'll do what we're doing, which was more economy style hotels, buying them for pennies on the dollar and renovating them and, running them efficiently. And we started what is now Baywood, building more select service hotels.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I just go back to when I started in the business, right? It was probably my father working with your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And we were
Very
selling,
interesting.
Holiday Inns, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's what triggered me. It was the green sign, the 2-story exterior corridor, full restaurant, full everything.
Full restaurant, full
You could buy it
everything.
for what, 2 times?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, actually, we bought that one for one time.
One time.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we went into the Holiday Inn and we're like, wow, this F&B is 80% of the work, and none of the profit.
Right.
And fast forward here, whatever it is, 30 years, and here we are in this, this restaurant it's a beautifully built out restaurant.
Yeah, now you have an unbelievable restaurant and a rooftop, and now all the F&B outlets probably do, well, maybe back to those Holiday Inn days, but they do more revenue top line than the hotel today.
Yes. And this will be that. This will do more top line revenue than the hotel will.
Give me a guess on what you think the top line revenue of all the F&B outlets will do.
Oh, between 25 and 30 million.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the hotel will do roughly what? 6 to 8?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. We've come full circle.
Exactly.
All right, so go back. So now, so the Holiday Inns, we didn't like F&B. So then, and that's when the Holiday Inn people sold to Bass, right, in London.
Yeah.
Sold the company. And then the execs stayed in Memphis and started Promise.
Yeah.
And started this little thing called Hampton. So people went and built Hamptons next to the Holiday Inns.
Yes.
And at that time, it was either a Hampton, a Comfort, or a Holiday Inn Express.
That's right.
Didn't
and
matter
Holiday
which
Express
three.
was still a little new then,
Right.
but it was Hampton or Comfort then. Comfort was right up there. And we built some of those too. We built a lot of Comfort Inns across the country.
Why did you decide construction was the way to go?
Because we wanted to be in this space of a Hampton Inn and, Comfort Inn, these kinds of this very select service space. And we wanted it. There weren't a lot then. There weren't a lot available to buy at the time,
Yep.
And, our comfort zone was a smaller property, if you will. And so we wanted to be in certain locales where we felt comfortable.
Right.
Where we were already there. We already had some infrastructure, things like that. And so construction was the way to go.
Yeah, I remember that. Then there's still a bunch of 64, 80 to 83 room Fairfields and Comforts and Hamptons all across the country.
All across the country.
Because that was what everyone was like, no, we can do this.
Yeah.
Right?
And we learned early on, like 80 rooms, it was great, but it was very profitable, but we need more rooms. So we need 100 rooms. We need 120 rooms. And that's where we're at now, around between, 115 to 125.
Yeah,
That's the key count that
and
we're
just jumping
comfortable with
forward. How
now.
many hotels do we have now?
125-ish, another 10 or 12 under construction, and another 20 in the pipeline.
Did we build all 120?
We built, I bet you, 75% of those. Yes.
Of those.
Yes.
And bought the rest.
And bought the rest.
Who are your partners? Right? Still all sort of friends and family.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. So we've got a great group at Baywood. I've got 2 older brothers that are in the business with me. We do everything together. I've got great partners at Baywood that run different regions for us. Very talented folks that push the development along, and they do a great job at it.
How many partners would you say you have now?
I'd say it's about different levels, like 15 to 17, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
15, 16.
Yep. And you just got all the group together at your house. So you had what? 75?
Yeah, so it was both sides of the company. My dad's side of the company, original, the economy side of the company. And
is that still going? Is dad still doing the economy stuff?
My cousin, really, my older brother takes care of all those now. They're up to 80, 90 of those also. So, they do a great job.
Which business is more profitable?
Cash on cash return, probably theirs.
Probably them.
Yeah, and a return on equity, probably ours. So
sure,
probably some.
Although
they would argue that theirs are better.
Of course they would.
Yeah.
I've talked to Jay a lot.
Yeah.
Of course he would. But you have to sell yours to monetize.
That's
to really
right.
See
That's right.
Your vision on the capital.
That's right.
Side.
That's right.
You're doing a bunch. I'm going to keep going, but you've evolved. You're doing a bunch of extended stay. That seems very purposeful. Yeah. What? Tell me more about that.
So extended stay hotels, it's about 80% of our pipeline. It kind of goes back to the Great Recession of 2010. We had about 5% of our portfolio was extended stay. And we realized then that that those hotels were outperforming. It didn't do this as much. It was more steady, the extended stay business was. And so we were very purposeful and deliberate, and a stated goal of we wanted extended stay hotels to be 50% plus of our portfolio. So from that point on, and from 2010 onwards, we were very deliberate in making sure we were pruning some of the transient hotels, planting extended stay type hotels. And I believe we're right around 55, 56% right now of our portfolio's extended stay, and about 80% of our pipeline.
So DC, Maryland is where you started.
That's where we started. Then, like I mentioned, Texas. We have a big base in Texas now, still in San Antonio.
BJ.
My partner Nick and BJ and Atul, they run that office there in San Antonio. That's the second kind of outpost, if you will.
Okay.
And then we got into Miami in 2004 with an acquisition of a Fairfield Inn, as a Gen 1 Fairfield Inn. And today we have about 24 hotels or so open in the state of Florida. So in about 20 years, we've developed, almost all of those have been developed by us.
And that seems very purposeful. Why was that? Why the transition to Florida, South Florida?
So we came at a very interesting inflection point in Miami's time. So kind of Miami was a lot of crime in the late 90s, early 2000s. The economy wasn't great. It was very dependent on South America's various economies. 2004 was, I'd say, the low point in Miami's evolution, if you will. Argentinian peso crisis was kind of going on at the time. Argentina was a big driver for business in Miami. They were, like, I'd say, one of the wealthier South American nations prior to the peso crisis. And so from then on out, I think that the safety and security in Miami increased greatly. I think they said enough is enough. We've got great leadership in the city of Miami over the years, and in Florida in general. Great governance. It's kind of evolved into companies wanting to move here, people wanting to move here, then companies wanting to move here. And I also think, like, Shaq in 2004, 2005, moved here from, and a lot of eyeballs were all of a sudden on this new Miami Heat team that had done well before, but weren't great before. All these shots of the American Airlines Arena right on the water, all that. It was just great for the city of Miami at the time.
And obviously, you've proven to be right. You were early.
You were
coming in 04, and now everyone seems to be racing to Florida, if not South Florida.
That's right.
So you feel good about your bet?
It was a great bet. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than
good.
smart. Yeah. So, yeah, we've just had a great run of it here.
Go backwards. How's the stuff in Maryland and DC doing? How's the performance of those assets?
They are, I'd say, back up to 2019 levels this year.
Okay.
It was the last area to kind of come back to 2019 levels, and they've exceeded it somewhat, but our expenses have gone up also.
Of course.
So, yeah.
Of course. We'll get into that, the expense stuff. But so we obviously made the transition to Florida, Miami, South Florida.
Yeah.
And Texas.
And
but
Texas.
You also have now Denver.
Yeah, we do Northeast,
right.
From upstate New York up to New Hampshire and things like that. We also have a Denver office.
Yep.
They handle kind of Denver West, if you will. So Denver into Phoenix is our big development area. We're doing a little bit in California, staying out of the big cities of the Bay Area and LA, things like that, but more kind of purplish cities, if you will, in Fresno or Sacramento, Natomas, things like that. We're doing a little bit. El Centro, California, Southern California also.
And how much of that is you've just gotten so big that you have to look at all these different pockets? But did I put words in your mouth?
It becomes difficult, right? Because we only want to do extended stay.
Yeah.
And we only like 3 or 4 brands within the extended stay segment. And so you've got to go where the opportunities are. So if you're just sitting here and saying, I want to build a hotel in Miami, well, there's not an opportunity.
Right.
There's very rarely any dirt to be found unless we demolish something. That becomes cost prohibitive sometimes. And so we have to go where the people are moving and where the businesses are headed.
And that, I'm putting words in your mouth, but so where are your projects today? Is that Fresno and San Jose and
under construction.
Denver,
We've got
Phoenix?
Denver under construction, something in Phoenix under construction, something in Portsmouth, New Hampshire under construction, Columbus, Ohio recently. We have 2 open, a 3rd one under construction. So we like that. It's kind of outlier for us. The Midwest wasn't really a thing, but Columbus is a very unique city in the Midwest. It's
Ohio
the
State,
only one. Yeah, Ohio State's there. It's a college town. Also, a lot of companies are there, a lot of financial services companies and things like that. So it's very different.
And how much in Miami under development?
Miami, we probably have 3 hotels in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami MSA under development right now, and about 4 in the state of Florida right now. Yeah.
All right. But that seems low. Is that because it's harder to find dirt, like you said? It's harder to find projects. You got to tear a building down.
That's right.
You got to really do some work, which might also be barriers to entry, might help. I don't know.
Yeah, all of the above. And, we're a little bit measured, right? We have 125 hotels. We're not trying to race to 200 or anything like that, Teague. So we're very purposeful. We're very discerning on what our next projects will be.
How are you getting your deals done? How are you getting them financed? How are you getting them built? What's happening with construction costs?
Yeah, luckily, we have this great reputation over the last 40 years of always paying our mortgage, and that kind of helps. My partners that are locally, Chris Desai and Jeff Desai here in Miami, for example, he probably has lunch or dinner with a banker every single week. Whether he has a need or not, he's always meeting with people. And eventually, when you meet them enough, they become comfortable enough for you. They're going to advocate for you in their committees, despite, their stated thing, well, we're not lending right now. Eventually, you've got this proponent in your corner, and, eventually they get things done.
Let's talk acquisitions. What are you seeing in the future? You guys aren't buying a ton? You're not selling a ton?
We will buy. Mostly we're buying if we have an exchange or something like that.
Sure.
But almost always it has to fit in our box. And by that, I mean, it's got to be the brands of extended stay that we like, number one. Number two, in areas where we think that we have operational efficiencies, we're going to buy them in areas we already have hotels. So now we can area manage, hire more talented people, pay the higher salaries that come along with that expertise, but they can help us by managing several hotels and do a great job at it.
It's funny, we're a little nuanced shift that we're seeing in the transaction world is developers are now buying because development has gotten tougher and more expensive, which we can talk about.
Yeah.
But now they're becoming buyers. So it's still a 6 cap world. I know everybody wants to be a 9 cap, but no one ever sells for a 9 cap. All the stuff we know. So it's a 6 cap buyer, but that 6 cap is below replacement.
Yeah.
And the developers see that. If it's the right asset and the right brand in the right market, and they think, you know what, I might have built that and I can buy it for less, we'll take the risk. We're long-term holders. We'll buy that. and will hold on to it.
Right.
And they can get loan from their local bank, sign a recourse. So that traditionally hasn't been. It's been the big institutions who have been the buyers, the Six Caps, Blackstones, and the Starwoods, who've come in and bought those things. And today they're not, because they're doing math. And it's interesting nuance. We're seeing the developers step in and buy that.
Yeah, and also because we self-manage, we're one of the few larger companies that still self-manage. I think that we also are a little bit more dynamic in our management. And when we're taking over hotels from these very large management companies, we think that we can produce some efficiencies.
Let's talk about management and operations efficiencies. How concerned are you, and how real are insurance, taxes, labor, and the other?
It's all very real. I bet you insurance costs for us have doubled over the last 3 or 4 years, where, it's a simple hotel in the Northeast or somewhere that didn't have any wind-related activities, things like that, we'd be paying $35,000, $40,000 for insurance. And now that number is like 70 to 80. So it's virtually doubled in the last 3-4 years. And then when you have in coastal markets, like a Florida, like a Miami, basically all of Florida, the prices have probably gone up by 150%.
Yeah.
In those.
What's going to happen with even these more recent hurricanes? Is that going to continue to add to it?
Of course it will.
Yeah.
Of course it will.
When is it going to be priced out of developments in Florida?
Demand is still very strong.
Yep.
As long as we have the pricing power, I think that the developments will continue. I think that once, you reach that breaking point where, you can't raise prices anymore and your expenses now exceed simple math. If your expenses then exceed your income, then you've got to, pivot very quickly.
Are we there? Can we not raise prices anymore?
No, it's very difficult right now.
We raised prices. A bunch.
We were very fortunate, to ride this wave during COVID, but now even with the high prices, our expenses have caught up with us. So it was like a year or so, like between 22 and 23, where our prices went up and our costs hadn't really gone up that much yet. But then, now I think that with our increased income, increased RevPARs, our expenses have increased commensurately with that.
What's happened with construction costs?
Construction costs, over the last 10 years or so, they've been going up 10, 15% a year. Lately, we see it stable. It's kind of plateaued, if you will. But we will see, if and when financing kind of loosens up a little bit, I do believe that construction costs will go up again. Yeah.
Cool. Give me a ballpark number. What's it cost to build a extended stay hotel today?
So in Florida, we do everything concrete because of the wind resistances and the wind loads and things like that. So anywhere between $200 to $225 a key in Florida for a concrete building for an extended stay hotel, which costs a little bit more than a transient hotel. If it's a wood frame somewhere else, it's probably still in the, approaching $190 to $200 a key. In certain markets, it's not cheap.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Talk me about this project, right? How many years did it take you to do this project?
Yeah, so Chris Desai, my partner here, he was working on this probably since 2018-ish, I would say. We were ready to roll, I would say, during the early parts of COVID. We had our approvals. Obviously, it was kind of a weird time. It was hard to get this financed at that time, so we waited. In that wait, costs went up probably about another 15, 20% probably in that time period. So we opened here about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so far, so good.
You mentioned Chris Desai a couple of times, and BJ and the other officers. You have built a very impressive team and organization. So obviously we want to talk about the people. We know how important people are.
Yeah.
But you seemingly used to be very hands-on in everything you did. And now you're less.
I do talk to them all probably once a week. I meet up with them regularly. I have really long conversations with most of them on a weekly basis. It's just not the same as before. Before I knew every single detail of every single deal, and now I'm letting them handle it. They've all been around this business and with us for like 15 years, 20 years, things like that. So they really know what to do now. They don't really, they're really on autopilot. They do a great job.
But that's the evolution. before it was you having the meeting with the bankers. Now it's Chris having the meeting with the
Yeah,
bankers.
they meet with the banks. Yeah,
Right.
like my partners Neil and Sandeep in the Northeast. They find the banks. They do. Before it was like they only call me if they really need. If there's two term sheets, they're kind of going between like which let's go through this together, something like this.
So tell me, how do you find your partners? How did you find Chris?
It's all just very organic. Some are somewhat related tangentially to us. Some are, my older brother's college roommates, nephew, or, it's just on and on and on. And nephews, then friends. And, so it was just, then they brought their friends on and it's kind of all kind of morphed organically. And I'm very deliberate about chemistry.
Yeah.
So I know pretty quickly whether I can get along with somebody, and I just don't bring them on. We spend a lot of time together and start with small baby steps together. I see how they operate. I see how they treat their associates. I want to see how they are conducting themselves on a professional basis. And then chemistry with me personally. I want to be able to just have a beer with them or hang out with them or something like that, or have a nice meal with them. And if I can't spend 2 hours without pulling my hair out, then that's not the right people for me.
Yeah, I've always said we do business with people we like, trust, and respect.
That's exactly
right. We want to have a beer with them.
That's right.
We trust them. That matters, and respect.
That
They're smart.
summarizes
They know
it
what they're
perfectly.
talking about.
Yeah.
So I love that. So you were at the conference. You were on the panel.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for doing that. But I remember you were very bullish in March on the industry.
I was
Are you still bullish
in March. Yeah. So the second and third quarters for us have gone very strongly. I still am bullish in the sense that I think supply growth is very muted.
Yeah.
Due to all the various things, high construction costs, availability of financing, things like that. So I do think that we have this runway for about 3 years or so more, where we're going to see very muted supply growth. There's a lot of projects that are ready to start construction.
Yes.
And they are just awaiting whether it's lower interest rates or availability of financing. And I'm suspecting it's more availability. As opposed to higher interest rates.
But you're still getting availability. You're still getting loans.
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that when everybody else starts getting their loans, the construction prices will probably grow up by 15-20%. So I do believe that delta in interest rate right now will be beneficial to us because we can get a product to market 10% or so cheaper than what the next guy will be able to do if he starts construction a year or two from now.
Interesting. Interest rates versus construction costs.
Construction costs, yeah. And construction,
what's it costing you to borrow today? What interest rate are you paying today?
Anywhere between 6.75% to 8%.
Is that construction?
Construction.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's because you're signing personally from your
We're
relationship
signing
bank.
personally, yes.
And the typical person can't get that.
That's right.
Because we're hearing double-digit construction cost interest rates.
Oh, no. We wouldn't do that.
But that's probably from non-recourse.
Oh, yeah.
That's
different.
In the debt
mezz
funds
and
it's exactly
like different layered financing.
Which is why they're not building because their projects aren't penciling.
That's right.
Interesting. What do you think happens with interest rates in general, macro interest rates? What happens?
A week ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said that I think that we'll get a couple more cuts here. And, I think that the data of the last week or so hasn't been too beneficial to drive lower rates.
Right.
But we'll see how that goes. Who knows? Some people still say we'll see a quarter point decrease, things like that. I think it will be not as meaningful in the short term, any further rate reductions, maybe a quarter point here or there, but I don't think we'll see anything meaningful.
So I agree with your old prediction and now your new prediction. I very much agree with both of those, but it is interesting. We are seeing a lot of optimism in the space. Oh, interest rate cuts. So I'm hopeful that translates. Maybe it won't come, but
we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Right now, all the stuff we're hearing is interest rate cuts, post-election, turn of the calendar, and it's going to be a busy house.
Yeah.
What do you think 2025 is going to look like?
We'll see how the regulations, FDI, the banking regulations, they're very strict right now. So we'll see how that, with regards to reserves and things like that, the banks have to hold. That's the more reserves they hold, the less they can lend to us, right? So
we need liquidity so that more banks can lend.
Yes.
And the more they tighten, the less they're lending.
That's
it doesn't
right.
matter the cost of it, as you said earlier.
Yes.
We just need liquidity.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're still doing, quantitative tightening, and That's a trick. Selling
Yeah.
bonds rather than buying bonds is a liquidity issue. So we need
Yes.
liquidity in the system. Or maybe we don't, because we still seemingly inflation is still there, which is why we're not cutting rates.
Yeah.
Did I get all that right?
We'll see. I mean, there's still, they say there's a lot of money on the sidelines. We'll see where it gets deployed.
Yeah, and the stock market's still at an all-time high.
Yeah.
So go figure.
That's right.
Go figure. Too much money out there right now, I think.
There is. Indeed, there is.
All right, Al, I'm wrapping up.
Mhm.
But I've heard, what is this I've heard within Baywood about $7?
So my father came to this country in 1969 with $7 in his pocket.
Love that.
And so we were able to kind of turn that $7 into this fabulous enterprise that we call home. And so to this day, every new associate that starts at Baywood is gifted $7 their very first day of work. And it symbolizes the $7 that the founder started with. And, it's very symbolic. It's kind of adds to the culture of our company, but where we started to kind of clue them in on, hey, this wasn't just kind of, we weren't handed this. It was very built organically and through very hard work.
I love that. All right, so now my corny question. If you had $7 today, what would you do with it?
Oh my God, I don't think I could buy a sandwich with $7 today, right?
Starbucks coffee?
Yeah, maybe a Starbucks coffee, yeah.
Should we roll it all into NVIDIA and see what
Something
happens?
like that, yeah. A piece of NVIDIA, a small piece of NVIDIA, yeah.
I love this. Al, this has been fantastic. Thank you for sitting down. Thanks for sharing your story with me, with all of us. I think it's inspirational. This is what we hear a lot of, but we need more of this. And inspiring the next generation to take $7 and do something amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate it,
Thank
Teague.
you.
Thank you.
You.